Hello and welcome to the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast. The intention of this podcast is to open your mind, get curious about yourself and connect to the power you hold within. I am your host, Karen Maloney, an inside-out coach, helping you to believe in yourself and manifest your desires. Check out the podcast, available on all platforms, and go to my website, www.karenmaloney.com for all info. Hello everybody, welcome back. It's me, Karen Maloney, and thanks for tuning in for another episode. What have I got coming up to tell you about? Well, as always, I have my silent counselling. I invite you to join my mailing list to keep up to date. I have my coaching packages, but I'm also planning a group relaxation session on Wednesday, the 23rd of February at 8 p.m. Irish time. And it's 45 minutes and it's relaxation. It's using breath work, some relaxation, some visualization and some silent counselling points to just help us feel calmer in our body, release excess stress and energy, and just feel a bit lighter. So go to my website, karenmaloney.com, click the shop section and you will find it there. So then back to today's guest. Today's guest is a repeat guest from last year, actually February 2021, and it was episode number 101 titled Path to Superior Health with Simone Gisondi. So just a quick reminder as well on who Simone is. After suffering a stroke in 2011, she turned to studying natural holistic health to heal herself. She believes that a personalised and holistic approach is essential when it comes to health because every body is unique biochemically. As the author of her recently published book, Against Medical Advice, Simone tells her story of overcoming and healing on her own terms and in a way that supports the body's particular needs. As a dedicated holistic nutritionist, detoxification specialist, and holistic health coach, Simone applies the same principles she did to her own healing, learning about clients' unique needs, ailments, and personal goals, and empowering and involving them to build a plan focused on restoring health, wellness, and vitality. Aside from being the author of her most recent book, Simone is a registered holistic nutritionist, cell and tissue regeneration detoxification specialist, and a certified holistic cancer practitioner. She's also a certified hypnotist and personal trainer. So I loved connecting with Simone again for this conversation, and really a lot of the conversation evolved around her work as a holistic cancer practitioner and looking at cancer as well. And she shares so many tools and techniques and questions in this episode as well in how we can look at this lifestyle disease. And she talks about how the body is always looking to support us and heal, and the different elements of cancer being also mindset, psycho-spiritual, emotional aspects, and taking a multifaceted approach in order to heal. She also talks a lot about mindset and coming out of victim mindset and asking questions of our body and starting a new way of communicating with our body, as well as talking about the power of belief, energy healers, practical steps, breath work, cold therapy, meditation, forgiveness. And she also shares about 5 things that we can control no matter what. So it's a longer than normal conversation, but enjoy it. And if you want to find out more on Simone's work, you can go to her website, Simone Gisondi, that's Simone, Gisondi, GISONDI.com. But as always, I will have links on the show notes from my website, karenmaloney.com, and go to the podcast section. And also, just as a final reminder, before we get stuck in, the intention of these conversations is not for self-diagnosis. You know, it's sharing information, helping you to maybe expand your mind, look beyond what maybe you have just looked at, but still it's you to do your due diligence to connect in with you and your practitioners and see and follow what is right for you. But there's definitely lots of food for thought. So enjoy. Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for joining me for another episode. And I have a repeat guest joining me today, but I'm so super excited to welcome you back again. So, first of all, Simone, you're very welcome and thanks for joining again.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. And I'm very grateful to you for having me back on your amazing podcast, Karen. Thank you.
Well, I'm really excited to go deeper in the conversation, and just to let all the listeners know, I definitely invite you to go back and listen to Simone's first episode with me, which was back in February 2021, so actually nearly a year ago, and it's called The Path to Superior Health and was episode number 101. So definitely go check that out for a deep dive into Simone's story, her background, how she healed herself from a very serious stroke, and just all the wisdom in that episode as well. But maybe just to give us another small, brief introduction to yourself, Simone, and just to set the scene for us today.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much. Yes, it's been a year. It's incredible how quickly time flies. So yes, at that time I spoke about my stroke. I wrote a book about it, and it's really important that people understand exactly what it takes and the power that we have in our hands and at our disposal to heal ourselves. I've studied holistic natural health ever since my stroke. Which was 10 years ago, almost 11 this year, actually, I should say. And the importance of really using everything that we have available to ourselves and educating ourselves on how the body works so that we are in harmony with it and we can help it and support it on its healing journey. And I think the fundamental, most important thing for people to know is that the body is actually programmed to heal itself, and all it needs is our help along the way.
Yeah, and even just as you're talking there as well, I remembered little nuggets from our last conversation were popping up, and you elaborated more on some of those, and we'll go into some of them again today. I should say as well, I reached out as well to have a conversation even focused. And again, there's many overlaps and common themes and underlying similar approaches. But I had connected with you and asked to speak about cancer in particularly and how the holistic approach to it works. So maybe if you just, again, kind of top line, just talking a little bit first about that idea that, our body knows how to heal and it's programmed to heal, but it's for us to know how it works and kind of take that power back. Maybe even just elaborating a little bit on that. Obviously, how the body works is really detailed as well, but if there's some way that you can help people to, I suppose, really just be aware of its capacity as well to heal.
Yes, so the fundamentals of health apply to the body no matter what it actually deals with. So whether it's stroke, and that's a cardiovascular thing, whether it's cancer, and that could be anywhere in the body, whether it's diabetes, whether it's any disease, and typically diseases are nothing more than symptoms that the body exhibits to us to ask for help. And we not we, but the medical community puts a label on it to give it a name so that we know exactly what it is that we are dealing with, which part of this, which system of the body, which organ system, which part of the body. But fundamentally, the body actually requires us to help it and support it because it is programmed for healing. And to give you an example that people can actually connect to, if you think about, let's say, a cut or a scratch, if you keep it clean, so that's our action in supporting the body. If you keep it clean and you keep it dry and you don't expose it to anything dirty, any germs, that actually heals. The skin fuses back together, it grows back together. So that's the healing process, like the step-by-step process of the body. And this actually happens on a larger scale in the body as well, in the sense of how it happened with me with my stroke and how it happens with people that have cancer or any other disease, as is called. The body does what it's meant to do. And there are many things in the body that it's programmed to do. For example, for us women, after we give birth, the body is programmed for birth and it's programmed for healing after birth. So it has a blueprint for how to do that. And all it needs is just for us to get out of its way and to give it what it needs. And what it usually needs is nutrients that it can use to be able to build, regenerate, and create or produce new cells, produce new enzymes, produce hormones, things of that nature that will help it get back into balance. But to take a step back from that and Speaking of cancer, I remember when I did my internship, I realized and I learned such a huge lesson, because in learning about cancer, I learned so much about the physiological aspect of things, physiological and anatomical, and, the body systems and how they interact and they interface with each other. But what I noticed, and I always say you learn so much more from practice than from a book. When I went into clinic and I was doing my internship, I could see people coming, and these were all cancer patients. I could see people coming in, and you could see whether they were actually fighting for their lives and they wanted to survive, or whether they had given up.
Mm-hmm.
So it taught me, and then in working with people, clients, and my father had cancer as well, I realized that the first step, what happens physiologically comes later on, but the first step is a decision and the power of the mind, where you actually tell yourself and you decide that you're going to beat this. And then you use every single possible available tool out there, and you leave no stone unturned. And this is how I actually applied this to myself when I decided that, you know what, like, I'm not going to let my stroke take me down, and I'm not going to rob my kids of their mother. I'm going to beat this. It's just as simple as that. And I grew up in a culture where basically when you made a decision, you would kind of put it in your mind, and these are my golden words, and my friends know about this: there is no other possible outcome. I always say this, like, you should put it in your mind that there is no other possible outcome other than you healing. And then your body works and interfaces with your mind, and it follows its guide. It follows suit as to what the mind says. So once you start with the mind and you tell the body, okay, body, we're going to heal this. Let's do this. Let's work together. And then you listen to the body and you take cues from what it needs, because it always gives you this inclination. For example, if you don't feel like you want to eat, then don't force the body to eat. Fast. If you feel like you want to hydrate, like you feel like, oh, I just want something, something cooling, something that I need to hydrate because I'm feeling thirsty, then drink. Don't feel like you have to eat because it's 12 o'clock and it's noontime, and usually we eat at noontime. So those kind of things. And I was able in clinic to see how people had either made that decision and people who had not made that decision. And you could see it even in their moods. They were really great disposition versus this apathy. People were happy versus sad and depressed. And all those things play such a huge factor. I think that in the cancer community, and I learned this when I went through the whole process with my dad, and he was part of the allopathic medical community, they concentrate greatly on how to heal the body. So physiologically and anatomically, they work with the tissues, they work with the physical, tangible aspect, but they don't even take into consideration how important the mind is, because the mind and the body are so intricately connected that, and we see this, most people who are depressed are not healthy people overall, and they're not defined as such. And vice versa. People who are healthy are typically not depressed. They go to the gym, they invest in their health, they use all the tools available. So I think that's the first step. Any cancer patient, any patient of any disease, take the first step in making the decision in your mind, using your mind to say, we're going to beat this. And then you take the next step forward and you make use of anything you have available to you. The experts, the healing modalities out there, and there are many, many, many that I employ and I recommend to people. Even when I helped my dad, the same thing. I recommended to him what to do and what to use. And I know that it's difficult for some people because they look at it as very woo-woo, but there are things that we have available to us that are so powerful.
Yeah. So much of what you said there is... yeah, it's so true. And even I love the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton. And, he talks about the biology of belief, and everything comes down to a
That's
belief.
right.
And I suppose you're lucky in one sense that you had that strong sense of belief that in your culture, because again, so much is from culture, society, education, family, religion, whatever, that you had that belief that, oh, when you make a decision, it is done. There is no possible other outcome. But a lot of people they might have contrary beliefs that things never work out for me or whatever. So yes, the mindset is a whole huge piece that we will definitely go deeper into. And it reminds me, because I lost my dad to cancer 10 years ago, and he went the allopathic route. I saw him wanting to try other options, but there was such a fear embedded in him. Like from the moment they found the tumor, it's like, oh my God, fear, 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 rush, rush, rush. You need surgery, you need chemo, you need radiation, like now, 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 now. And he wanted to look at different options, but he felt he didn't have a choice because there was just so much fear and pressure. Whereas, and for a long time, I had that, oh my God, if I ever got the big C, that's it. Like, just put me down. I don't even want to try. And I carried that for a long time because I just saw his experience. Whereas then I went in a deep dive myself and I discovered, I was like, oh no, this is like you said, this is just the body's cry for help. It's not actually our body giving up on us. It's asking for changes and support. And it reminded me of a doctor that I came across at that time, Dr. Charles Major. He was from the States, and I think he healed himself of multiple tumors all up his spine and everything. But he has a saying that he was like, every cancer is curable, but not every person with cancer is curable. And
That's right.
it's exactly because it comes down to the mindset. You know, if you believe, okay, I've got 6 months, this is it. Well, then if that's what you believe, that's the belief that will come true. So yeah, and then even, you know, I learned like for a tumor to even show up, you're talking 8 to 15 years. So for the most time, you do have a couple of weeks to experiment, try other things. It's not the big fear, scaremongering, like, no, you need everything, unless it's on your brain or something, fine. But most of the time, no, you can take a bit of time. But anyway, going off in a tangent. But even just to break it down a little bit first, and how do you describe cancer? Like, what is it?
So if I was to describe it, but first I want to go back to what you said, because it's so important that people understand this. Cancer does not come out of the blue from yesterday to today. It's a process that the body goes through very slowly over a period of years. And then it's only when it becomes known to you, then it becomes acute. And that's how the medical community identifies it, as acute. Now, all of a sudden it's urgent. But to be honest, it was urgent 2 weeks ago before you knew, because the tumor was there just as much as it is
and
today.
A few years before.
Exactly. A few years, a few months, whatnot. Yeah. So it is a lifestyle disease, and there are many, like diabetes is a lifestyle disease, cardiovascular heart disease, cardio, which refers to the heart, and vascular, which refers to the venous, like the veins and the blood vessels of the body. That's also a lifestyle disease. So most diseases are lifestyle, and certainly that's the case with cancer. And basically what happens is when we introduce things into the body, so from a scientific perspective, when we introduce things into the body, what happens is it affects the health of our cells. And we have trillions of cells in our body. And when these cells become damaged, starved of their nutrients, starved of their oxygen, starved of what they actually need to function properly, because they all have a process and functions just like we do. Like we go to the bathroom, we breathe, we blink, our heart beats. They have different processes of their own at cellular level. So each cell is like a little body of its own. And when those processes get interrupted and the body of the cell starts to mutate or get damaged, those processes sort of go awry, and the replication process of the cells starts to increase. So they replicate quickly. So you get a whole bunch of cells that grows out of, like, it just goes awry in the sense that it starts to grow. And the body, in its infinite wisdom, puts it in a sac. This is what a tumor is. And this is very much, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit because it's such an important and incredibly interesting thing. It puts it in a sac to protect the rest of the cells. And this is exactly what happens in pregnancy. So when we get pregnant, us women, what happens is there's a sac that the baby stays in so that it can stay protected and so that the baby doesn't damage through movement any of the other tissues around it, right? And there was a time, believe it or not, when you could take a pregnancy test, which could tell you whether there was something growing inside your body so you knew that you had cancer. This was actually possible at one time. But then what they did, the cancer industry decided to take that, and of course, they didn't want people to go and self-diagnose themselves. So what they did is now pregnancy tests only measure a particular hormone to see if it's increasing or not. So believe it or not, that's the case. So basically, that's what happens when those cells start to grow out of control, and there's an accumulation of cells. That's a tumor. The most important thing to know, also from a scientific perspective, is that once it's in that sac, there is no oxygen. So cancer thrives in a non-oxygen environment. That's why the more we oxygenate the body, because every cell needs to breathe as well, the cancer cannot survive in that environment. So you're basically disabling the growth of the cancer. Cancer loves sugar, especially refined sugar, because that's for cells as an overall. And I know I'm talking about many things in particular here, but cells' basic need for food is carbon, and carbon is sugar, but it's not the refined white table sugar that we have that people put in their coffee. None of that. The body likes very fundamental stuff that the nature makes in fruits, for example, and that doesn't require insulin. So there are many different scientific things, but cancer loves refined sugar. So people that eat, let's say, lots of breads and lots of pastries and candy and chocolate and all of that stuff, cancer loves that, and it thrives, because then you're helping those cells that are out of control, they grow. So that's from a scientific perspective. From a psycho-spiritual perspective, I think it's a lot of, and the emotional is a lot of anger. When we internalize that kind of energy into the body, that energy that is stuck and trapped inside the body has to find a way to express itself. And typically, and my father, I could talk about this openly, my father had internalized a lot of the repressed anger growing in a very brutally communist environment back to where, I was born, and constantly not being able to express that anger, or constantly having to repress it. You trap it inside the body and it has to express itself in some way or another. So it's important, again, going back to the mindset and the emotional aspect, it's so important that you forgive people. It's so important that you don't sit into a place of anger and you sit in that same spot of fear and anger and not letting go of grudges and things that people did to you 20, 30 years ago. Another aspect of it, especially for women who are mostly afflicted, let's say, by breast cancer, in that area of the chakra, which is where the heart chakra is, if you are not able to express love, or if you feel starved for love, and a lot of times you see that that's where women have it because they are emotionally hurt. So a lot of that expresses in that area of the body, and then in other areas of the body, of course, corresponding to whatever the psycho-spiritual aspect of it is. Like, for example, the root chakra, and then we have the creativity. That's why women get afflicted in the reproductive system. That's the creative part of our body, because that's where life gets created. So there are all of these psycho-spiritual aspect of things. That's why I always tell people, look deeper. Don't be stuck on what the allopathic medical community looks at, which is just a tiny little fraction of the bigger piece, of the bigger piece and the bigger puzzle. So look at it holistically. And that's why I studied holistic, because we are an entire being that's comprised of much more than just skin and cells and bones and blood. And we have we have emotions, we have thoughts, we have a mind, we have a consciousness. So those all play together. They interface with each other to bring who we are as the individual, the unique individual that we are, into creation. And all those pieces actually play a role in health, and they play a role in disease.
Yeah, I just love all that you shared there as well. And, it's so true. Like, and also as well, I'm like, this is how incredible our body is that we don't even realize. It can take such abuse for 10, 20, 30, 40 years in our life, and then something will present. And again, it's not our body giving up on us. It's like, oh, please help me. I'm drowning here. I need some support. I'm overwhelmed. I'm completely toxic, or whatever the case may be. And it's that scream. It's literally a scream at that stage when we get to that point. And even that, I don't know what that study was done years ago, but I think about some chicken cells or something, and essentially they've been kept alive for I don't know how long, because like you say, cells need basic nutrients, oxygen, and being able to eliminate. Those cells kept in a petri dish for like years and years, they stay alive all the time because they're looked after with the basic needs. And again, is it possible for us to do that? Probably not when we live in such a toxic world, but we can maintain our health and our cells in good health and vitality as long as we don't have any major, injury or something in our lives. And we can live long, healthy lives. But again, it's not going to happen without our input. And that's, again, the power we hold. And I love, you mentioning, again, that deeper look and even noticing where in the body it is, because in the psycho-spiritual aspect, every body part, every organ is connected to some other emotion or some situation. So it's really fascinating when you open your mind as well and begin to be curious and look deeper and have more awareness. It's pretty spectacular, again, our body.
Yes. And
But yeah,
a lot of this, because you mentioned Dr. Lipton, and I know that, and I've studied his work, and it was part of my curriculum when I studied holistic cancer. He's such an incredible human
he's
being.
epic.
And yes, and he's such a pioneer because he actually did a lot of experiments where he showed exactly how cells are affected by their environment. So the environment, the tangible environment outside of the cell, as well as the environment of the thoughts. And if anybody wants to go out and Google this, they could find there was an experiment done, and you could do this because I did it at home myself. I was so fascinated by it. Go and, let's say, take a couple of jars and put rice or something in the jars, and then put them side by side if you want to, and then speak to one of the jars and give it loving words full of emotion, positivity, empowerment, and then look at the other jar and give it very negative, ugly words of hatred and darkness. And then you will see over a period of time how the ones that were given the negative aspect of things will actually start to spoil and go bad, whereas the ones that were given loving thoughts and positivity will actually thrive and remain untouched and not spoiling and not getting damaged. So those are basically the effects that our thoughts have on our cells, on our body. And every day, everything that we say, whether it's out loud or inwards, when you think, every cell is hearing what you're saying and feeling what you're feeling. So if you're going to be in a state of positivity, even if you do have the diagnosis of cancer, if you're going to say, my body, I love you. Thank you so much for telling me that you need help. I'm so happy to help you. Let's work together on this. Okay, tell me what you need. First things first, let's talk, and then have the conversation to say, I'm here to help you. Those things have so much impact. People really discount that. And then there's also imagery and visualization. And I'm so blessed that I did this cancer course that I did. And it was so fascinating because we looked at so many different other aspects other than just like what stage you're at and, when you got your diagnosis and what's your prognosis and things of that nature. That's just part of it. But we looked at, for example, the power of imagery. And there were cases that we studied. For example, there was this one man who got a cancer diagnosis. And what he did is every day he watched, I think, 2 or 3 comedies. And he laughed, the power of laughter, because that's positive. That's a very positive energy that you kind of bathe yourselves in. And he healed his cancer. And I'm sure that, he obviously was not drinking, doing drugs, and not sleeping as part of that. He was doing that in conjunction with other things. Then there was another case of a man who had also cancer diagnosis, and his son went and got a piece of wood that I believe, and I'm paraphrasing here, he kind of had it carved into a cross, and he took it to his father and he said, this comes from a blessed tree in Peru, I believe it was. And he said, it's blessed and it's going to help you heal. And this man took and put all the power of the healing in that piece of wood, and he held it and he used it. And because he believed so much that thing would heal him, it healed him. He healed his cancer. So this is the power of the mind, you guys. This is the power of the mind. You through your beliefs. So whether you believe you're gonna heal or you're gonna believe you're not gonna heal, you give power to that belief, and that belief is gonna come into manifestation. It's really as simple as that.
Yeah, totally. And thanks for saying that again and talking about those experiments. And definitely, people go experiment, try it for yourself, because it's the only way you'll truly know as well, is in seeing it and experiencing it. But again, that's exactly that's the epigenetics. Like the old science was that, no, everything was genetic. You couldn't do much about it. Done. Whereas, that's Dr. Bruce Lipton's work as well, the epigenetics. And like you said, no, the cells are actually always listening to every single thing that we say internally and that we take from outside, and they are responding. And that's why when we change, and from the inside out, when we change, we have the power to upregulate or downregulate our cells, like, because they're always responding to our thoughts, to our feelings, to our emotions, to our beliefs, period. And like you say, this cancer or any illness or dis-ease is a call to let you know that you're out of alignment. So you mentioned some steps there, of being conscious of your thoughts, or the power of belief as well, and believing in something, or using laughter as a medicine throughout a practice. But again, what are some other practical tips that people can do? Now they've had this awareness, maybe something has sparked. If someone is going through any such dis-ease, maybe something has sparked in their mind and they're like, oh, maybe I do have more power than I thought. Maybe I can heal from this. So what would be other steps or other mindset work or practical tools or tips that they could do as well to support themselves?
Certainly meditation. That's one of the things that actually calms, and people who meditate know this. It's actually a calming mechanism. So if you're able to do anything that will calm you, whether it's sitting with your eyes closed and concentrating on your breath, so that's one way of doing it. There are guided meditations that you could purchase or even find for free on YouTube. Or if you want to just light a candle and stare at the light, at the flickering light, and be able to concentrate on that to the exclusion of everything else. So you don't go into the mindset or constantly being bombarded by the thoughts of, oh my God, what if I die? Oh my God, how long is this going to, what's going to happen? And when am I going to have surgery and chemo and this and that? So those are really, really stressful. And you sort of, like you start a cascade of very negative things in the body when you have those kind of thoughts. So if you're able to meditate and still your mind, you will feel the calmness, which obviously translates into the body. The cells become calmer. You're not sending any kind of messages of negativity that will start that cascade of negativity. Visualization is another tool that I always recommend to people. So there was another case when I was studying cancer that we studied, and it basically, and there's many, many different ways of doing this. But for example, if let's say you have a tumor, if you can visualize that you go inside and you have a vacuum and you vacuum that tumor out. And this has to be done repeatedly. You don't do it just once and then that's it. And you also have to really believe it. But these are some of the things that you can employ. Fundamentally, of course, the belief that you can heal, meditation, visualization, other tools, like I'm a very big fan of aromatherapy. So essential oils are very, very, very powerful. So those are things that I also employ.
Just something as well before you go on that popped into my head, that I know a lot of people who any disease, whether cancer or whatever, befalls them, and maybe naturally so initially, because we don't have this awareness and we haven't been taught these things, naturally fall into victim and feeling like a victim, and why me, and life is so cruel and my body's given up on me. And that's a huge aspect as well. So how can people even start to move out of the victimhood, first of all, to then begin to move into empowerment?
So the way that I usually recommend to my clients is, no matter what befalls you, start wondering, what is your body trying to tell you, or what is life trying to tell you? So if there's something that needs to be healed outside of physiologically, then that's what your body's trying to tell you. Because again, it's manifestation of something that manifests in the body. And Dr. Lipton talked at large about this, and I'm so glad that you mentioned epigenetics, because he spoke about this, and this is scientifically proven that only about 5% of all cancers are actually genetic. The rest, about 95% of them, are all lifestyle. If you look at people, I mean, cancer has to start with somebody. Usually the way that it happens in families is when we have the same lifestyle, the same mentality that is passed down from, let's say, the sick parents to their children, and then those children adopt the same kind of thing, and then they repeat the cycle. But the cancer had to start with somebody, because I'm sure that in that family tree, back going through the generations, there were people that didn't have cancer, because if it was genetic, then that means that everybody in that particular genetic family would have cancer for sure, 100% for sure. But there are families where you see that's not the case. So that begs the question, why is that? Why does that happen that way? How come people get cancer and some other people don't get cancer? And furthermore, if it was genetic, let's say you have siblings, then that means that both kids would get cancer. But oftentimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
So these are questions that would arise. But fundamentally, you have to, as a first step, you have to wonder, what is my body trying to tell me? And what can I do to help it heal?
I love that. Again, always leading with curiosity as opposed to going against ourselves. It just, even the energy of it, because I'm so into energy. If you approach yourself, your body with that question, it feels like there's a bit more space. There are other possibilities as opposed to victim. We're just like, this is it. It's over. The energy is more restricted. So yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that.
And I just wanted to mention that's not actually exclusive to cancer. That actually happens in many, many diseases, and certainly was the case for me with my stroke. And that's where it manifested for me. And I want to tell everybody, just because to sort of dispel this whole genetic thing, nobody in my family, I'm the first one in my family to have had a stroke. My grandparents on both maternal, paternal side did not have strokes. My parents did not have strokes. Anybody in both my maternal and paternal, like my great grandparents, none of them had stroke. I'm the first one.
And yours, and again, people can listen to the full story, but again, you on paper were super healthy and had perfect blood work and, not the kind of candidate for it, but it did happen because, again, different lifestyle choices.
Yes, actually, that is what sort of tipped me off, Karen. I'm so glad that you asked, because it really baffled the doctors too, because they're so used to identifying physical things, to have an explanation for the patient as to why you have this. Oh, so you did this. Okay, well, yes, of course. You have high blood pressure and you eat lots of salt and you're overweight. Well, of course, you'd have a stroke. I mean, those are the principal things that would cause a stroke. They didn't have that with me because I was very athletic. I was working out, but my mindset was so misaligned. I had this great recipe for health physically, and I was following it to the letter. What I was eating, when I was sleeping, what time I was waking up, how many times I would go to the gym, what kind of exercises I would do, how much I would run, how many miles, how quickly, how fast was my mind. Everything was very regimented. But my mindset was a complete mess. There was so much incongruence between my body and my mind and my emotions. Always, 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 emotions will win against the body, no matter what. And everything starts emotionally and psycho-spiritually.
Yeah. It's so funny when you say that as well. Like when I look back even on my journey and how I used to be, I honestly was the perfect candidate for some sort of major disease, illness, depression, something like that. And it didn't happen. And the only thing I could, because like that, I was so regimented, stifling perfectionism, so critical of myself. And the only thing that I know now I can see it clearly helped me is anytime I felt in a funk, I always went for some kind of energy work. I didn't understand it, but I was always drawn to some kind of energy work. And it's only now as I go further on my journey and, look back to who I was, I can see, that helped me no end. Because if I did not have that, honestly, I was that perfect candidate for something major. And that's why I love energy work and everything as well. But then back to just some more practical steps for people. I know you mentioned, obviously the mindset is huge, and even just opening up that curiosity and beginning to ask, why might this be happening? Or what is it trying to tell you? And getting some beliefs and releasing and forgiving. Epic.
Yeah.
How else then as well can people open up their perspective and support themselves more holistically?
So once you have that kind of conversation with yourself, and I recommend to people to sit down and really kind of do and work with somebody, because you don't have the blueprint for it, but dive deep into exactly what it is. Because oftentimes you're like, well, what? No, I don't have anything against anybody. But are you holding a grudge against somebody? Are you thinking about something that, your second grade desk mate did to you that you cannot let go of, and you keep thinking it, and now you're 45 years old and you're thinking about what that kid did to you back then, who probably doesn't even remember they did it. those kind of things. So that's fundamental, but you have to be able to dive deep and say, why do I feel this? Do I love myself? Have I forgiven myself? Like, there are things I was the perfect for this, because I would do things and then afterwards I would feel massive guilt. Why did I do that? I'm such a terrible person. And I wouldn't forgive myself. So even though you might think that you're like, oh, I've forgiven everybody, you have to also forgive yourself. You have to love yourself. You have to go deep into yourself to see exactly where the energy is stuck, so that you can get it unstuck and be able to kind of move past those things and get them resolved. So that's the fundamental thing, the work that you do with yourself to kind of identify, because once you have the answer as to seeing where exactly this originated, then you're able to heal it. I didn't know that, and I didn't have that blueprint when I had my stroke. I didn't know any of this stuff because, of course, I put all the power, and I always caution people, do not do this. I put all the power of my healing into the hands of doctors who they weren't there to heal me, and they had multiple patients, and they have multiple patients. They get overwhelmed. They're human beings too, and we have to have compassion for them. They also this is just a job for them. They have families that they're worried about. They have maybe other things, maybe financial stress, or who knows. So they're not there to pour all their positive energy onto you. That's your responsibility. And I found that I gave all my power to the doctors, waiting for them to heal me, but the healing happens from us. So that is the number 2 thing. So sit down with yourself, see exactly where you need to work on things, and then take your power back and recognize it's your responsibility to heal yourself, not anybody else's. And then work with things and with people, like you said, Karen, and that's you were lucky that you were drawn towards that, because I found that much later, after my brush with death with my stroke. Work with people that actually have this attunement to energy, and they're energy healers, because these people are the most compassionate people. They work with energy because they understand its power and they know how to harness it. And be able to go out there with an open mind, because if you're not going to believe in it, then it's not going to help you. So it's very important. And there are many things. Other things, like, for example, in your household, if you don't sleep near those things that emit electromagnetic frequencies, like a router or near your phone. With your don't put your laptop on you. Don't put your phone on your body. I see this every time I go to the gym. People have their phones inside their bra, the girls, or inside their tights, near their organs. No, 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 and no. You do that repeatedly, those frequencies constantly interface with your cells, with your body. Don't do that. Don't have that in the household as much as possible. Keep them in an area that you're not near often and you're not sleeping near. And these are things we can control, because think about it. We go to work, we're near these kind of machines. There are towers everywhere out in the world, for signals, for cell phones and such. So the little things that you could do, employ them. Don't put the phone on your body. Don't put the laptop on your body. Keep these kind of things away from you as much as you can, because you have to be near them no matter what, for work and things like of that nature. But the little things that you could do. Practice breathing, like box breathing, for example, or pranayama, for those of you that know about the culture. Get as much oxygen into the body as possible. Cold therapy is also important. I tell people, go and research Wim Hof. This guy is the master of cold therapy. So if you're able to take hot and cold showers, you get to move the lymph. And lymph is where basically it's the bathroom of the body. Like you said earlier, Karen, the cells need to eat, breathe, and they also eliminate. Their elimination, so their poop and their pee, so to speak, we're going to use those terms because people understand more. It goes into the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system has to be moved out of the body. So the waste has to get moved out of the body. But the lymph is not working on a pump like the blood is. So the blood works on a pump, which is the heart, and it kind of circulates throughout the body. The lymph doesn't circulate in that same manner. It just sits there. We have to make it sort of move along through exercising. So when we exercise, we get the movement, and that's what moves the lymph. Same thing with cold and hot therapy. So if you're going to take a hot and cold shower, so you go into hot water, do as hot as you could tolerate. And then from that, you switch it to cold water, to as cold as you could tolerate. And you do cold for half the time that you do hot. So if you're going to do, let's say, a full 60 seconds of hot water, then do 30 seconds of cold water. But cold, 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 cold. And what happens is the blood vessels, the lymphatic vessels, everything sort of dilates. So it expands and then it constricts. and then expands and it constricts. So that kind of movement, that acts like a pump for the lymphatic system. And it's phenomenal for the immune system, because a lot of times the immune system cannot. One thing that people should know when it comes to cancer or anything really, the immune system, oftentimes, actually, people have had cancers that they were never aware of because the body took care of it. And so it's so important that you keep the immune system working optimally. And so the hot and cold showers are really, really phenomenal. Breath work is really phenomenal because you get in that oxygen that the cancer cannot survive in. It's the environment that is hostile to cancer. Breath work, exercise. So get as much of that movement, get sunlight, it recharges the body. You get that vitamin D, which is another very important thing to the immune system. And the nutrients, so the things that we eat, every single thing, and I want to talk a little bit more because we talk so much about the energy aspect of things, Karen. The food that we eat has its own energy. It has its own vibration. And if you're going to put low energy into the body, then your body's going to have low energy. If you're going to put high energy things into the body, it's going to have high energy. So fruits, especially because they're not exposed to heat in the sense of you're not cooking them, you're not doing any of that stuff. Fruits in their natural state, ripe, and the way that they come off a tree or a bush or wherever they come from, those are the ones that have the most nutrients. They're kept intact and they're not changed by anything that you do outside of them. So those are the most powerful things. They're cleansing, they give the body what it needs, and it's so easy. They are the easiest thing to digest. And the reason why food is important is, think of it like this, and everybody has probably seen this. If you go to one of those fast food restaurants, this food has been highly processed, and it's not real food the way that nature made it. A lot of times it's stuff that sits in a freezer in the dark, nothing that's really nutritious for that matter. You take all of that stuff in. Whereas food made by mom at home, especially like in the traditional way that it was done way back, the mom was at home cooking for the family. The love that mom puts into the food because she's trying to do things to nourish her family, that's drastically different. It's a drastically different thing you take into the body rather than food that is made by somebody who's probably not the happiest person, is barely getting by on minimum wage, and is probably begrudgingly making your meal as quickly as possible and sending it out, through the conveyor belt to get to the drive-through. So those kind of aspects of things are so important because you internalize all that energy of that food into your body.
Yeah. And I know in the last episode as well, you spoke a lot about detoxification, which obviously is another aspect as well in supporting our body to detoxify. And, for anyone who may be going through something, they might be thinking like, oh, well, there's not a lot of much here. Where's the quick fix? Where's the quick solution? Where's the big powerful medicine or something like that? But all of these are so powerful. And, there is no quick fix for anything. It's reversing the damage of what has been done. But actually, the body responds really, really quickly when, like you said at the very start, when we support it. It's always wanting to heal. It's always wanting to be in homeostasis and balance and working properly, but it needs our support and our input. It can't do it without us. So, it may not be a quick fix, but because it's a lifestyle issue as well, you're completely changing your lifestyle. So that takes some time and some patience and some desire. And like you say, the belief that you actually want to live and to live a good life. But then it will happen. And then, like you're saying, even that energy, you will begin to feel better. And then that feeling of feeling better will make you explore more of the other things that make you feel better. And that's how it starts. And I love as well, just a reminder when you said following your body's signals, because that's so important as well. You said, oh, I was so lucky that I felt, or I went to energy healers in that. But I can say, and this is why I know the importance and the power of our intuition as well. And our body is always speaking to us, because it was not a conscious thought. I didn't understand what was happening, but I just knew this feeling within my body of being called. So I was like, okay, well, why not? So when we do follow what is showing up for us, because again, our body, we only know ourselves. Nobody else can know ourselves and know what's right for us. Nobody outside of us has that power or can have that power. So it's again building that relationship with ourselves and listening to our body and following the signals that we get, no matter how crazy it may seem or sound to someone else, because it doesn't matter. It's our body talking to ourselves. And everything you mentioned, the mindset, the meditation, the slowing down, the curiosity, the asking questions, the forgiveness, this allows us to begin this communication with our body, because it takes a space, it takes a slowing down, it takes coming off the go, go, go pace to allow and explore and discover this communication and this
Yes,
relationship.
and I actually did a post on my Instagram the other day about the things, because people feel very disempowered right now with the situation at hand, which is worldwide, of course. And I actually listed 5 things that you have control over, and people need to take control over what they can actually take control. So, for example, I spoke about the fact that only you have control over what you think. You have to give permission to people to control your thinking. And so that's one of the things. You have full control over your thoughts. You have full control over what you put in your mouth when you eat, or what you ingest, whether it's a beverage even. Or whether you do anything lifestyle related, like smoking, drugs, vaping, things of that nature. We have full control over that. We have full control over who we interact with. The people in our lives, like the toxic people, we could eliminate interaction with them. We have full control over what we ingest from social media, from TV, from media at large, magazines, influencers, things of that nature. So we have full control over what we allow to interface with us, which either serves us in a healthy way or in a not so healthy way. It actually affects us negatively. And these are the things that people can start employing at every single moment. And I'm so glad you mentioned, because what we spoke about earlier, cancer takes a very long time to form, and all other diseases. Even for me, the manifestation of the stroke happened, but it was kind of building up over time. It was not like yesterday I was happy-go-lucky, and then the next day I was like this depressed or angry person, and poof, I had a stroke. It's usually an accumulation of this kind of energy. Same thing with, let's say, cardiovascular. People gain weight over time. You're not 120 pounds one day, and the next day you're 190 pounds and you're 5'2". It doesn't happen like that. It takes time. And equally, the body needs its time to repair itself. So just like you said, and that's so fundamental, people need to know, you have to adopt a lifestyle. You're not going to go on a diet or whatnot and then you go back to your ways. No, because if those ways brought you back to disease, then they'll bring you back to disease again if you're going to adopt them again. You have to change, and you have to change it for life. It's a lifestyle change.
Yeah, it's like Dr. Joe Dispenza as well says, if you want to be someone new, you have to break the habit of being yourself,
Yes, very
and
true.
that's everything's just a habit. Everything's just a program. It's just a thought. And half the time it's not even ours. Like when we do the work, 95% of our thoughts and beliefs, they're actually not ours. When we do the introspective work, they're picked up from society, from culture, from religion. So actually when you look at it, you're like, this doesn't serve me, and you can choose again. And that's the power, and that's the choice we have. And it's remembering that we have so much power, but we're taught this kind of helplessness, learned helplessness in
Yes.
society. But even, that last piece that you just shared as well, what we do have control over, our thoughts, who we choose to interact with, what we choose to consume, food wise, music wise,
Yes.
television wise. That's where our power is. And that's what makes all the difference. Because again, our cells are always listening. So if we put ourselves in environments internally and externally that don't support us, well, our body's just going to respond accordingly. And that's the
Yes,
message as well, to just be like, oh, actually, hang on. I have so much power. I can
that's
shift
right.
anything. My body is incredible, no matter what is showing up. Like you say, it's a symptom. It's a cry for help and support. But it's so possible. It is so possible. Anything is possible, like they say, but it all comes down to our internal environment in the first place, and our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that we hold about ourselves, that we hold suppressed. It's about releasing them and choosing again. And that's the internal wiring. We're literally changing our whole internal vibration, energy, and frequency. So then it becomes easier. Like you say, you want different things different things light you up and you feel alive. And what a great conversation. We've gone way over. And I mean, there's so much more we could still talk about, because we're talking about really tangible, practical steps for people. Yes, it
Yes.
takes some effort and discipline and dedication on our part. We have to have the desire in the first place to want to change, to want to live, to want to
Yes.
feel good. And then when you have that, all these things will carry you. But again, there's so many other treatments as well, like, high dose vitamin C, hyperbaric
Oh,
chambers, and
yes.
more things like, I don't know, what's your take on some of
Ozone
those as well?
therapy. Yes. Oh,
Ozone.
yes. Ozone therapy, of course. Enemas, being able to get the colon cleaned out so that, you don't re-intoxicate yourself. You don't take the toxins that sit in the colon back into the body, because that's one of the major elimination organs of the body. Things of that nature. Yes, there are many, 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 many out there. That's why I always recommend to people, go and work with somebody. And it has to be somebody holistic, because people that understand holistic, the root word is whole. So we understand that you have to work with a whole spectrum of things available to you. And to go back on one thing in closing, I really want to tell people this because it's so important. When I was going through my stroke, I lived in fear. And right now, fear is very prevalent in our world, because the doctors that I was going to were constantly telling me that I was at high risk for a second stroke that would kill me. And of course, I lived in fear, because that's what they were doing all the time. Maybe it was not intentional. Maybe they weren't trying to instill fear in me, and they were just giving me a fact, because, that's what they had learned in medical school. And when I studied cancer, there were many cases, believe it or not, and this, again, you could go and search it and you'll find it. There were many cases where people were given wrong diagnosis of cancer, or they had indeed had cancer, and the doctors would tell them, okay, you have about 3 months. And within 3 months, people would die because they believed it. Power of the mind. And then upon autopsy, there were many people, when they did the autopsy, there was actually no sign of cancer in the body. But because they believed the doctor who told them, so keep your power to yourself at all times. Don't allow that kind of stuff to come into your body and to be adopted as a truth that the body now says, okay, now we're going to operate according to that.
Yeah.
That's what the body does. It operates according to thoughts.
Yeah, like they say, the body is like a yes man. It just says yes, 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 yes to everything that we say, whether good, bad, or indifferent. That's why, we need to be conscious of what we are doing and thinking and feeling and ingesting and everything, because that's where our power is.
The body is a tool of the mind. That's one of the fundamentals that I've learned. The body is a tool of the mind. So the mind says something and the body says, yes, master, let's do this. Use your mind effectively.
Yes, so thank you. And just a final mention, I know what sent me down the rabbit hole of opening up my mind and perspective when it came to cancer and cancer treatment and approaches was after my dad passed away, and it was a documentary called The Truth About Cancer, and it was really fascinating and eye-opening. So I don't know if you're aware of that or you've come across it as well, but it's really empowering for people as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I encourage people. So Ty and Charlene Bollinger are actually phenomenal people. And Ty actually had a lot of family members die of cancer. So that's what sent him down that rabbit hole as well. And I recommend that people go and search. He's got a multitude of books, and they talk about cancer in its entirety, but they also talk about the medical industry, how it came to be, the cancer industry, how it came to be, what it entails. He's got so many different things that people can take advantage of there, as far as therapies, some of the things that they can do and where they can go to find them. He has links in the book, and everything is there. It's like a one-stop shop. And I also know that given, what's happening out there in the world right now, Ty also had done, so the truth about cancer is one of the things. He also has truth about vaccines. So it's such an empowering educational piece that he's put together for many different aspects of health. Highly, highly recommend that your listeners go and do some more research on that.
Yeah, it was really comprehensive. And I just got goosebumps as you were talking about it there again. But yeah, really comprehensive. And I know for a lot of it, because this is going back years ago, I was a bit like, really? But now I'm like, oh yeah. Fascinating. So yeah, I'll maybe see if I can get a link to that as well. So it's exciting. What an incredible, empowering conversation. And maybe we'll have to do one again at another stage. And definitely anyone who's feeling called, I 1,000,000% recommend Simone and reaching out and seeing what you offer and seeing if it aligns, because your way of thinking and being and operating is just so empowering, and it's what we need, because we can see from just looking at systems, or symptoms, we've never been more medicated and obese and everything, but yet we're sicker than ever. So, it's clearly not the solution. There's so much more. It's remembering our power, stepping back into that and going from there. So thank you so, so much. And please just share where people can find out more about your work and your book as well. It's called Against Medical Advice. And obviously, a lot of the protocols that you put into place for your stroke, they're similar. They work across the board. So share where people can find out more.
Yes, first and foremost, thank you so much, Karen, for the opportunity to speak with you again. It's definitely such an enriching conversation, and it gives me so much joy to talk about what I'm passionate about. So thank you for providing the platform and for having me on your platform. And yes, people can actually find my book on my website, and it's SimoneGisondi.com, SimoneGisondi.com. And my book is actually linked there, so they have a link to buy it if they so wish. And other than that, I have all my contact information on my website. They can contact me, and I would love to help anybody. I always work from a holistic, natural perspective. And thank you again, Karen, for having me on your show.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. And as always, I will have links as well from the show notes directly to your work and your book. And again, it's just been, I feel so lit up and empowered again as a reminder from this conversation and the power that we do have. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you.